good? Okay. My name is Lisa. I'm a 3L. I will echo Paige's statement that this is the ADR team is the best thing I've done at law school. It's been my favorite experience by far. The competitions that I've done have mostly been negotiation and mediation. So like Chelsea said, and like Katie said, you are doing a negotiation, but there's a mediator also that you work with, and sometimes you are the mediator as well. So it's really interesting building those skills. I would say that the major plus about the competitions that I did was that 2 out of 3 of them were international, and so you get to really learn from and negotiate with folks who maybe don't really have our styles, and that's really helpful in rounding out your own style.
So I'm Thomas, also a 3L. The entire board is 3Ls, always will be. So I've done most of the negotiation competitions. I haven't had a chance to do any of the mediation. So if anyone has questions about any of the different competitions, happy to talk about it. Last weekend, I finished the 3rd round of the negotiation challenge, which is an international competition. And that round was with the Greek team. The week before, it was, these are my teammates here. But yeah, the first round was with the Chinese team. And yeah, very great experience, really interesting. You're dealing with language barriers, you're dealing with cultural differences, and it really, it's a very enriching experience. And then after law school, I'll start my practice at Wilson Sonsini and their corporate transactional group. So I'm the big law guy on the board, happy to help bolster any Hastings students with my path, do introductions and whatnot. Not only are we a group that really cares about negotiation, we also very much care about our student body and mentorship and helping people, whatnot. So don't be afraid to ask.
So any questions, any initial questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you guys talk to us about like what's a week like for you guys in the team?
So a typical week on the team really depends on if you have a competition that weekend or not. So I would say if you do not have a competition, your week would, interaction with the team would be maybe you're helping another team practice for their competition. So you might be doing some spars or working through a problem with them. If you have a competition, then your week is going to be packed with practices. Typically the competitions are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But in some cases they're multiple Friday, Saturday, Sundays in a row, like Thomas's competition. And, you know, practices can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on the problem really, and how you need to work it out.
It's definitely a you get what you put in kind of thing. With what Lisa was talking about with the sparring, you're never going to really be required to do that. But if you want to get better and you want to help, then you can do that as much as you like.
How does the competition work? Do you guys get a fact pattern and what does that look like?
Yeah, you get a fact pattern. It's essentially that. It's a problem. And depending on the type of competition you're doing, whether it's like straight negotiation or whether it's got a mediation element, you know, it would kind of inform how you work through it. But typically you'll get a fact pattern not super far in advance. So you don't get a ton of time to work through it actually. I think the furthest in advance I've ever gotten one is 14 days. So it's, you know, it's a fast process. And during those 2 weeks leading up to the competition, like it's intense. But because of that, right, you really get to know the problem in and out. And so you're going into the competition pretty knowledgeable about like, if X, then Y in a lot of different scenarios.
So like my question, I could like move court, you stand here, Wasn't like negotiation, aren't you like, how does it, I don't, like, who's judging you?
Logistically, yeah.
So I can take this here. Generally, you'll have whoever's hosting will have some judges that are usually professors, people who are in practice. You'll sit at a table generally with a partner across from the other. And then you'll go back and forth. The judges will watch silently until the end. And then after the round, generally you'll get individualized feedback without the other team there. And then you'll step out of the room and then they'll go in and get individualized feedback. And then sometimes I think you both get feedback together.
Yeah, it kind of depends.
Yeah, it depends, but it's usually like a 50-minute round. So they're usually pretty quick. And then the only other kind of competition I wanted to highlight that Lisa didn't mention is for like the UCLA Law Meet. You basically send a contract back and forth for the first couple of weeks, redlining it, and then you actually negotiate some of those terms on the contract. So there's lots of variation. All right.
So this is a question for like the whole board and also to a certain extent Clay as well, if you want to chime in, but like, I'm curious what each competitions you guys appreciated the most or had the most fun on. And I want to know why those were fun competitions to do. So I don't care who starts, but I want to hear from everybody on that point.
That's a hard one just because I think I love so many competitions. I think I'm going to have to go to my first because it was the first competition I ever did. She was my partner. She was amazing. So I think.
And they won.
Oh yes, we also won. That might have contributed to why I loved it so much.
I was going to also say our first one.
I guess in terms of it's really thrilling. And so in law school, we get really like a structure pattern where like you need to have your IRAC, you need to have everything. You're just listening for one specific word and you've got to like stay on task. But when it comes to negotiations, you've got so much freedom. You get a fact pattern, you commit to that role and you really go all in and you get to really work with the person next to you to really get to a conclusion that's going to work for you guys both. And I feel like that's really exciting. So I think I like that competition, not only because in the past, sometimes we travel. So I'd never been to Wisconsin before, got to go to Wisconsin, had cheese curds. They're great.
Exotic Wisconsin.
And I got to interact with people that and go to different law schools and see how their production was and just how different negotiations can take place. So I think that one was my most engaging because it let me travel. We had 3 fact patterns. And on the last night, they gave us a fact pattern and said, tomorrow morning, you're going to be negotiating. And I found that really thrilling, just that 24-hour process of like do or die. But yeah, I think that would be my favorite competition just because of the great fact patterns, getting to travel, getting to work with amazing people. They're also great coaches on this team for alumni. They come back and they're super supportive of us. Yeah, I think that's helpful.
I guess for me, it's kind of hard to say because I had 2 very different competitions. I had a mediation and a negotiation competition. So they were really different in how they worked in the type of negotiation you did. I'm going to say that my second one was probably my favorite, maybe because it's the most recent and fresher in my memory. But it was also fun because it was an international competition. So we got to negotiate with people in different countries. And so that was, that just made it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. I think like Paige said, the first one that we did, it's because you don't really know until you're there, what it's going to be. And so it made it all that more thrilling. Winning helped also, of course. But as I mentioned before, the other 2 competitions that I did were both international competitions. And so those are also very interesting. And I don't know how to pick a favorite, probably the first, but the other 2 were also super interesting as well. And getting to work with different folks on the team. So you're not necessarily going to have the same partner throughout the 3 years if you stay on the team for 3 years. So getting to work with different people is also really good, like kind of bouncing off each other. And as Paige said, like the creativity that you can have with it. And like, the problems are fake, but the negotiation is real. So, that's, it makes it more fun. It's just a fun experience, I think.
Yeah, and I would say TNC, the negotiation challenge, has been my favorite. I did it this year. I did it last year. It's an international competition. It has a very different style. So you're giving your opponent you're given their email address, then you have 48 hours to make a deal. And that's all. There's no judges to watch until the finals. You don't have to do it over Zoom. You can do it over email. You could text, you could call. It's totally up to you. So it feels a lot more real because it feels a little bit more like how things would happen in the real world. And then I really enjoy negotiating with people in completely different parts of the world. And that's a business and law school competition. So, you know, this year it was accountants from Langzhou, China, and practicing attorneys from Athens, Greece. Yeah, it was, and then we even had a med student, a surgeon from South Africa on one of the teams that we played. So a real mixed bag, but a very fun experience. Kept us on our toes.
I don't know if I can really play favorites, but I will tell you what I liked about each of the competitions that I did. The first year, our competition was in Chicago, and it was literally the weekend before we went into lockdown for coronavirus. So that was really interesting. But it's just really fun to do the in-person competitions. That I believe was in the ABA negotiation competition and or mediation and negotiation competition. And that's a 3-person team. So it's fun to work with people. It's a little bit chaotic. It moves really fast. You're doing a lot of stuff. But if you're into that sort of fast-paced social environment, then those competitions are really fun. Also, when you get to travel for the competitions, you get to do a lot of just fun team building stuff. Of course, you have a lot of time taken up by the negotiation itself, but there's also time to explore the area, eat cheese curds, you know, in Wisconsin, like Paige said. And then you also just have an opportunity to mix with ADR teams from different schools. And that is really great and fun and just another good way to build your network. And so I think that is one of the things I enjoyed most about the first competition. And then this last competition, the transactional negotiation competition, where you draft a contract and that's part of it. That was interesting to me because it was something that was a little bit more challenging for me. I don't really do business law. And so just kind of refreshing what goes into the contract and learning a little bit of the transactional business side of things, I thought was really nice and helpful for me. And then also, I think just in general, the competitions, all of them, especially on our team, we really focus on interests over positions. And I think just in general, this focus of how can we all work together to find something that will work for all of us has been a really great way to sort of change my perspective on how I feel like negotiations should work. I come from a previous job where a very like intense, contentious negotiations. And so just in general, through all of these competitions, seeing that there is a different and, you know, arguably better way to do it, I think is really, really great.
I'd love to hear about how you all learned to negotiate or learned to mediate. Like, what was that process like? Was there just like a lot of practices or like preparing for competitions?
You hit it on the head. So a lot of preparing for competitions. So you're working with Professor Wasted and usually an alumni coach or two, and you're getting personalized feedback. In my experience, as much as you want to practice, they're there to practice late into the night, early in the mornings. I have to commend the coaches for their availability. Additionally, I recommend taking negotiation courses at Hastings. They're really great through CNDR. I know Professor Wasted teaches them. There's lots of qualified faculty teaching them. And that's a great place if you want to do, you know, more of like the book learning, whereas the team is more of like the actual in practice, you know, doing it for real.
That said, taking the negotiation class is not a prerequisite for being on the team. But it's helpful, certainly.
And we're happy to talk to anybody if you have questions about which different negotiation professors, because we've all taken a class. So we're happy to give you input and stuff on that. So if you want to ask separately.
Yeah, I just want to know about the tryout process to join the team.
Sure. I think Clint can probably speak the most to that. But just really quick, we are going to have an in-school sort of mock competition later this month in April. And it'll be very similar to the tryout process. And so that'll kind of give you an idea. And this one is just for fun for us, because unfortunately a lot of our competitions got canceled because of COVID. And so we're kind of doing this mainly for us, but also for you.
Yeah.
Also for you, but mainly for so that you'll get a really good idea about how the tryouts go. But I don't know if you want to add more, Clint.
It'll be April 16th, probably around 9. More details to follow.
Yeah, I'm happy to add. So, I mean, the tryout process itself is basically to give everybody access to the different kinds of problems and things that we will do on the negotiation team. So I think the aspect that Lisa mentioned about what will be the closest thing about what we do, whatever we do for this semester's competition, is that you'll just get to see sort of what it looks and feels like to do one of these competitions. And then the tryout process itself is basically, we are trying to get data points on everybody to try to figure out everyone's negotiation styles. And then put everybody through different aspects of the kinds of problems that we get, so that we get to see everybody in action a few times. And then we have to try to pool from those kind of performances a cohesive team, right? Because the competitions themselves are different and are based on different kinds of disciplines. So what it means to do a good job and what a cohesive team looks like is a little probably different than other places. It's not like you just put people in some kind of linear order of who's the best and who's the worst. It's a lot more sort of complicated than that. And one of the things we really dedicate ourselves to in the tryout process is just letting you get to do the entire process several times, so that you will have the chance to experience and sort of do each of these things in context, and we'll have enough information to give you a fair chance to sort of adapt and grow and learn. So, but it's basically just showing up, getting a problem, having a very short amount of time to prepare, which the problems are sort of tailored to that. And then you just sit down and go and simulate a round. You'll get feedback from alumni, and then you'll come back a few times. So it's usually you have to come multiple times. We've varied that from year to year, and usually the ADR board and I will sort of level set on like where we want it to go, but it'll be anywhere between 2 to 4 times that you come in over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks. On your schedule. And then at the end of that, we will usually have an in-school competition that's very similar to this one, except it will be invite only. And then from there, we pick the kind of groups of people who will represent us in the various competition teams. And the numbers of slots that we have available from year to year, and that really depends on what competitions we're able to do. So it does, all those things actually are open-ended, right? So it's a little difficult to be hyper specific about it, but you'll come to a few different rounds, do a few different negotiation simulations with a few different types of problems. And then we'll pick a team from there that sort of balances out, all the different kinds of skills, from the transactional type skills to the mediation type skills along that kind of spectrum.
And I'd just like to add, the tryout process is it's fun because you're actually doing problems. It's a fun process. It's not like a really arduous process. It's fun.
And we do also design it to be on purpose different than I think the typical tryout processes for lots of things at school, where it's like you try out for journal and you have to just do one writing sample, or you try out for a moot court or trial and you have like 10 minutes to do something. We actually do try to give you a lot of room to breathe, adapt, grow, change with feedback. So you'll definitely have a chance to negotiate and have experience with it, right? So that even if not everyone can make the team, obviously, just by pure logistics, but you'll get a meaningful kind of experience from the process itself. And I do think that helps kind of make it fun and kind of quell the nerves too, because it's just kind of, you get to do it quite a bit.
Yeah, I was just wondering if any of you guys do moot court or law journal and efficiency ADR, and if you guys could talk about your schedules, how that moves out in your schedules.
I can address this. So my 2L year, I did journal, moot, and ADR. And this year I'm doing just ADR and journal, HLJ. And then it's more about, so Clint will help you with your scheduling. So there's fall competitions for ADR and spring competitions for ADR, and same for moot. Moot tells you well in advance which competition you're doing. So you just let Clint know, and oftentimes we can work around that. So I did a fall competition for ADR last year and a spring competition for Moot. So it didn't overlap and it was a nice balance. And journal is like, it's a lot of work time wise, but you have a lot of control over when you do it. So you can work, it works. It's not that, it's a lot, but it's not terrible. And every year people do like 2 or 3. And it does teach you how to like time manage. So it's actually kind of cool in that way.
Yeah, we have every year we have team members who do more than multiple teams and journals, and it works.
And to that point, the ADR team has no issue with you being on any other team or any other obligations. Just make sure to check with the other organizations that they feel the same.
Sort of building on that point, is it possible to do a semester abroad trio year and also still be on the ADR team in the other semester?
Well, in the advent of Zoom competitions, I would imagine, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's how we've been able to do a lot of the international competitions, as well is because a lot of the competitions are going hybrid now, in person and Zoom. And so I would imagine that, yes, that is possible. But depending on circumstances.
Yeah, and I would just say, just to add to that, you would never be disqualified for the fact of studying abroad. So we would just, if you knew you were studying abroad second semester, we had a 3L during these guys' time that they may not have known. They're during their 1 year who did that exact thing. We knew he was going abroad second semester, so he did a competition first semester, and that's basically how we would do it.
John?
Yeah, Lisa, kind of on that theme that you just mentioned about hybrid competitions, like what are we seeing going forward in terms of how these events will be structured? Maybe that's a question for Clint.
Yeah, well, I think Katie and I can talk a little bit about the hybrid that we did this year was hosted in Germany, but we didn't obviously go to Germany. And so the teams that we competed with were all on Zoom, but there were also teams competing in person in Germany. And it just, I think, makes it harder logistically for the host. It doesn't really make an impact on our prep or our actual negotiations or anything like that.
You just might have to get up really early because of the time difference. But it's kind of nice because then you're done before classes start for the day.
You could be done at 8 a.m. and
your weekend is, you still got it.
Yeah.
You have a question?
Sorry, you may have answered this before, but when you're talking about different disciplines, like does this go to like diplomacy, sort of like knowledge?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the skill across the board, right? Any legal profession you're going to go into, communication is going to be key. And I think being on this team has helped me for sure build my communication skills and to communicate like effectively what it is that I need out of what we're talking about and why I need it and how that works for the whole process. So diplomacy, certainly, especially where when you get to be like the mediator and have to be the neutral, there's certainly aspects of diplomacy there. So definitely you'll build those skills.
I'll just chime in really quick to say, I think diplomacy is probably the most important skill for the successful negotiators as well. I think in the end, if you show me the people who do the best job when they negotiate, diplomacy is very high on how you would get to that positive spot.
So when you're in a competition, what's your weekly schedule? How many times are you practicing? How many hours a week are you dedicating to the team? Like, can you be like really specific on how you plan all this?
Yeah, so for like the 2 weeks before your competition, that's when your time commitment will be. At a minimum, you should expect probably, let's say, 6 to 8 hours a week. I think it's also, the sky's the limit. So you need to be there for your partner, however much you need to do to get the problem at least to a point where you will represent our school well. But past that, I can't think of anyone sitting here at this table or really anyone on the team who doesn't go well above that because they want to do well and it's really engaging. And then you have the coaches who are available to you. So I remember fondly as a 1L, like sitting late in the classroom with Professor Watstead and an alumni coach and my teammates, kind of going through the problems, doing mini spars and reverse spars, basically just like practicing. And then, you go, and it's usually, depending on if you'll be in person or not, then there's like a little bit of travel, and then you get there, you get kind of settled, and then you do it and you come back. So it's intense, but it's a very finite amount of time compared to a lot of the other options for activities on campus.
Yeah, I'd say of all the activities I've done, ADR is the least time intensive. It's just for that week or two. And for one of our competitions, the problems dropped a week ahead. So then you only have a week. So then you only have a tough week. And it works around your schedule. So it's not like you're not missing class. It's usually, and our alumni are working lawyers. So it's either really early in the morning, usually it's in the evening when you're done with everything else for the day. And as Thomas said, it's fun. The practices are fun. It's not, you'll look forward to them because you're in a team and it's just fun.
And I will say, we keep talking about how fun the team is, and it's true. It's fun, but we also win. So it's fun in a way that's productive, right? So it's not like we're just, best friends for life, which we are, but it's a productive fun, right? You're building skills and winning trophies and having fun.
Can you say if you do fun things outside of the competitions?
Yeah, definitely. What you'll learn quickly is that the alumni of Hastings in general, but also the ADR team are really happy to get to know you and spend time with you and mentor you and coach you. And that includes drinking with you and doing things outside of school with you. And sort of letting you know that there is life on the other side of school.
And additionally, before COVID kind of shook everyone's world up, the ADR team generally does like a Friendsgiving event for all the people on the team, and then a Santa pub crawl where we hunt the coaches down in their Santa outfits. So there's a lot of the community stuff, and then there can be happy hours and whatnot. So there's definitely a sense of community and fun outside of the fun we're having preparing for the competitions.
Yeah, and if you want to get a little taste of it, come to the mock competition because I believe we're planning to do a happy hour afterwards. So you'll get to kind of see both the competition side and also the fun side. So
I don't want to put you on the spot, Alex, but I'm going to. Alex is actually competing with Ari and Thomas in the TNC competition and just joined us this semester. So I don't know if are you able to speak to what it is coming into the team now in your 3L year and what that's been like?
Yeah, definitely. I'm lucky because I have my two friends and Clint that I got to work with. I did moot court. I found it to be really intense in a way that ADR is just not, in the best way possible. It's the nicest way I can put it. It's just a really unique opportunity to hone your skills with a lot of people with different disciplines. I'm a future public defender, these guys are not. And so we all brought something different to the table. I'm very uncomfortable discussing money, in my personal life, in my professional life, my brain just shuts down. So this was a good push for me to get outside my comfort zone. I took Clint's negotiation class last semester and I really learned so much from sitting in that uncomfortability of role playing and putting yourself outside your comfort zone. So I always felt super valued and accepted by this team, even though I joined super, super late in the game. So I think it's just a really fun, I know we've said that word a ton, great opportunity with very little of the intense pressure. We have to win, I think everyone wants to win, but the feeling is more collaborative and community based than some of the other options on campus. So I'm happy to be a resource for anyone if you want to reach out to me as like the least experienced person in this room, but who really enjoyed the team and learned a lot.
So I have to pay Alex a compliment now. So she joined the team last minute because we needed someone, and she had been vetted through the class. But basically, she's one of the best active listeners I've ever worked with. And Ari and I can both attest to times where things got very challenging with teams that were more positional and weren't listening. And Alex was able to smooth things over and kind of, pull our chains a little bit, bring us back. So yeah, it was a pleasure working with her.
Other questions?
I guess a question that I have is, I don't know how to explain to employers what the value of ADR is. Can you talk to us a little bit about how I might, or how people who join the team might clarify to employers what the value is?
Well, so I will say, like, this is actually the thing on my resume that probably gets the most questions from employers at OCI, because they all know what Mood is, they know what Journal is. So they'll ask more about what's this alternative dispute resolution team thing on your resume. And then you say it's a negotiation team, and it just teaches you how to communicate with people. It's mostly about honing your communication skills and seeing problems that are there and how you can address them in creative ways. And
even if you're doing litigation work, over 90% of cases settle. So having those negotiation skills are definitely transferable to any firm you might go to.
Also, the team's track record is a big selling point. We win often. Our program is ranked at the top almost always. So that's a differentiator as well.
And you can also kind of sell the soft skills that being on the team gives you. I mean, employers like to know that you are comfortable and good at having potentially difficult conversations, and that you know how to broach difficult topics, and you know how to stand your ground for the things that are really important, but not get into the weeds and things that aren't. And those are all things that the ADR team really teaches you. And I think that you can kind of talk about that in how you can be an asset to the firm, in the everyday kind of how we think of lawyering, but also to be an asset to the firm just in just having your presence there as a genuinely easy person, hopefully easy person to sort of get along with and speak with and collaborate with. And so I think that is a really good selling point as well.
And I have heard actually from careers that increasingly employers are asking about dispute resolution and mediation skills, because that is how cases are settled. Very few things do go to trial. So to be able to have something on your resume to talk about is valuable.
And I want to build on that too, because I get a lot of access. One of the things I do in my classes specifically is ask people what causes them to take the class. And the number one piece of feedback I get by far is they're more or less instructed by their summer employers to do it. I think there's a lot of, when you talk to, especially people, ADR as a study is relatively young. I mean, by which I mean, like, maybe last 30 or 40 years altogether. So there's lots of people who say, man, I wish I had been able to have negotiation classes. I wish I had been able to have mediation classes. So they recommend that to you as like a projection on their part. And I will tell you that in my experience, as somebody who negotiates professionally for a living, you'll come out of this process much better than the average negotiator by a substantial amount. The amount of value you can get from it is quite a lot. And I think there's a recognition of that in the industry, right? So you'll hear from employers that they're saying, definitely go take these classes, because for lots of people, it's kind of a blank spot in their education. So it's hugely beneficial.
I can speak to that anecdotally. I also did the redlining UCLA competition where you have contracts sent back and forth. And I was explaining that to an attorney I was doing an informational meeting with, and her eyes almost popped out of her head. She was so astounded that that people in law school were getting the opportunity to have that kind of, hands-on experience, but she couldn't like refer me fast enough. I was like, great, this is amazing. Thanks, ADR.
Very briefly, I also know that this is a really good skill when it comes to working with clients. So a lot of times if you're a lawyer, you'll have to talk to a client who's in intake or interview, and they'll be in distress, obviously, because that's why they need a lawyer. So this is a really good place for you to learn how to actively listen to someone, figure out what their needs are and how you can meet those needs. So I think that's a really good practical skill you gain, because that's one thing law school really doesn't prepare us to do. How do you talk to somebody and speak legalese to them, but also hear their concerns and make sure they feel heard and safe and protected when they're with you at that table. So this program really helps you do that.
Anything else?
I'll add a question. Do you get credit for being on the team? School credit?
Yes, you do. You get 1 unit for every semester you compete if you have the minimum GPA, which is reasonable.
And if you're a 2L or a 3L.
Thank you.
You can be on the team when you're a 1L and you can compete, but you just don't get the unit of credit for some reason.
It's ABA regulation, actually. So we can Hastings is off the hook for that one.
What are the what are you judged on in competitions, and what is like the solution? Are the judges looking at like one solution, or kind of what is that? What does that actually look like?
So I mean, as a lot of your professors have probably told you, like, it doesn't actually matter what the answer you come to is. It matters the process you took to get there. So I think that's the biggest thing you're being judged on is how well you're working with your specific partner, how well you're working with your counterparts to move the negotiation along in a productive way. It helps if you get a settlement or you reach a resolution, but some problems are designed to where there is no resolution, and it is all about the process. So and each individual judge is also slightly different in what they find useful and helpful out of negotiations. So it's a little bit different for each competition, but overall, the process is really what's being looked at, not necessarily, you offered 500 and you should have offered 600, that kind of a thing.
Do you know the other side's fact pattern, or you only have one?
Generally, there's 3. So there's a shared general facts that both teams get, and then you have confidential facts and they have confidential facts. So one of the things that you'll strategize beforehand is, what do I want to guard? What do I want to give? And what am I trying to get from that side?
Yeah. What kind of questions can I ask to get the information I need?
Oh, cool.
Other questions? Clint, do you have any other questions that we should have asked today of the board?
No, I think that's it. But I will say, one of the things I will say, I guess a question that I would, when people want to know about when are tryouts, traditionally our tryouts are in this fall and not in the spring. And the reason for that is that we are one of the few places where the ABA, in fact, allows participation by 1Ls, despite their grading inconsistency. So we will have tryouts this fall. So we will not. So if you do want to try out for the team, the best thing to do now is kind of just get in touch. And we'll basically collect your information so that we have kind of a starting point for starting to give you the dates as they start to take shape for when tryouts will happen next semester. And that will be I think August has become blacked out. So it will either be the very, very last week of August or most generally starting the first week of September, I think, based on new Hastings rules. But right at the beginning of the semester, we'll be starting. So, so basically, if you're interested, definitely be in touch, and then we will, based on getting people's information, we'll do an outreach and give you those logistics as they take shape. It usually they start to take shape over the course of the summer. So by the time school starts, we'll have the dates.
And come on the 16th. Get some practice.
Definitely.
Yes, please come on the 16th. It will be fun and we will feed you. And I think there may even be a little prize.
I don't know, you'll have to come
Yeah,
find out.
find out, yeah.
Also, I just wanted to say before we wrap up, feel free to stop me in the halls, introduce yourself. I love talking about this stuff. I think this was mentioned across the board, but I can say explicitly, this is pretty much the only thing I enjoyed about law school. Here we are. So I'd love to talk to you about it. So please do.
Yeah, I think that goes for all of us. If you see us and you want to talk about anything specific related to this or law school in general.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, we were all a little just bummed that we didn't have a normal season this year and that you guys didn't get to participate earlier with COVID and stuff. It's just been kind of crazy. So next year, we're hoping it'll be much more back to normal, and we really hope that you guys will all come and try out. And yeah, and definitely come on the 16th. It'll be fun. You'll get to see what it's like, since you guys didn't get like the traditional what else experience with this.
And I should say there'll be information that comes out prior to the 16th, because there will be, you'll get the materials and things ahead of time. So we'll have some kind of informational session as we get closer to that date.
Yeah, the center will send out more information later. So thank you to the team and the director. And we'll still be here for a few minutes if anyone else wants to hang out, ask questions. Thank you for coming.